Hi, welcome to What's on Your Mind. What can we learn from Jay Franze? Who? Jay Franze? He's actually a VP at G4S. It's a security company. He's based in the US. He was born in Boston and now he has been living for more than 20 years in Nashville. Nashville is a very famous music city, especially known for its country scene. The best musicians in the world are living and working in Nashville. Now, Jay has been a sound engineer for a lot of his life, and he has mixed a lot of hit records, where we're going to talk about in the podcast. But right now, he's a VP of a big corporate, so G4S, like I explained, and he's also a coach. He has also his own podcast, Franze and Friends, which I really recommend, and it's about leadership. Enjoy Jay Franze. It's a podcast about music and leadership. Bye-bye.
Welcome to What's on Your Mind with Peter Snowart. Every week, a guest talks about his or her story, and that story can inspire you to change your own. Here's Peter.
All right, the tape is rolling, Jay.
Fantastic.
I can say that because I think you have also experienced, just like me, the ages where people really used tape.
Years and years of it, my friend.
Yes. Now, first of all, if I correct, Jay, your last name, how do you pronounce that? Is that Franze or Franze? How you pronounce that?
Yes, sir.
Franze, okay. So nice meeting you.
Nice to meet you.
Now, if I'm correct, you are born in Boston?
Yes, absolutely. Just outside of Boston, a small town called Peabody.
Okay, cool. And then you moved to a town or a city that I really want to go to, if I'm correct, after your studies. And that's the only city that's at least what they told me in the US, that the statue when you enter the city is not a war legend, but it's actually a guitar player. It's called Stevie Ray Vaughan.
Nice.
And it's in Austin.
Oh, Austin. No, I was in Nashville.
Nashville. Okay. Ooh,
similar but different.
Yeah. What's the deal there? I mean, Nashville, from a point of view of Europe, it sounds like the best of the best, the elite in terms of musicians are based there. How did you get there?
No, that's a good question. Nashville was an amazing place. I lived there for just over 20 years. And what happened was when I was in Boston, I wanted to work in the entertainment industry. I wanted to record music. So I went to a school just outside of Ohio, or just outside of Columbus, Ohio. Mm. And I went there. When I finished, I went back to Boston, all prepared and ready to go conquer the world, and realized that there was, just because I had a piece of paper in my hand didn't mean that I was ready to conquer the world just yet. So I worked under a few mentors in Boston, eventually moved to New York, and then found myself in Nashville when I wanted to try to break into we'll call it the big time, where I was able to work with some of the more known country artists and producers and make some records that people have actually heard of.
And did you play an instrument, or were a producer, or?
No, I was an engineer, recording and mixing records.
Oh, okay.
I did end up producing a handful of records. I do not consider myself a musician. I know how to play, but I'm not very good. My brain can tell my fingers what to do, but my fingers don't want to listen to my brain.
Yeah, but I mean, never, ever underestimate the power of a great sound engineer. I mean, if the band is good, a sound engineer can make it excellent. But if the band is great, the sound engineer can break them down.
Oh, it's very true. I mean, that's one of the things that when I was teaching at the college, we used to teach the up-and-coming engineers, was that, just because they're not the ones out there performing doesn't mean that they're not every bit as important, and they could truly ruin a person's day, or they could make a fantastic live show or a fantastic album.
Yeah. That's why I think when I'm also a musician, I'm a guitar player. So the first thing what I do is when I enter the room, I'm going to meet the sound engineers, and I make that I'm well connected with them. So It means giving them beer or whatever they want. So that, I mean, because I'm the guitar player, most of the time, in the past, I would say, Mr., can you turn that backline down, please? That guitar amp is way too loud. But of course, now I'm playing digital, so I don't have that issue anymore. They love me because of that, of course. But when you have good contacts and a good connection, you could do a little more. So, but today you don't do any sound engineering at all. It's something from the past, Jay.
Well, it's not something that I do on a day-to-day basis. These days, I have to pick my projects a little bit more strategically. I'm lucky enough to, at this point in that world, I only work on projects that I want to work on. Where in the past, I would end up working on any project that would come my way because I would have to pay the bills, put food on the table. But these days, I have a diverse career, so I don't have to rely on the entertainment industry to be what brings the money in and puts the food on the table. So now that allows me to be a little bit more selective.
Yeah. So you're a coach, you're a leader, and you're also a VP for a corporate company, G4S. I mean, how did you move from being in the entertainment sector as a sound engineer to a coach slash leader slash VP of a corporate? How did you do that? I mean,
Sure.
Was it you wake up and you're like, I'm going to become a VP of a corporate company selling software and all security services, etc.?
My wife told me I had to do it. No. So I was working in the entertainment industry. Like I said, I was in Nashville for about 20 years. And then what ended up happening is the industry took a turn. And when the industry started to change and more people were working out of their homes instead of in the studios, the need for the big studios and the big producers and everything started to dry up a little bit.
Sorry to interrupt you, but
Sure.
when was that? Was that in the end of the 90s?
That was about, I would say, just about 10, 12 years ago.
Okay.
So, and then what ended up happening is if you wanted to work, you had to be a little bit more innovative and find new ways of doing it. So what I ended up doing was taking the artists that I was recording and producing records for, I would then go on the road with them and then start working on the road. And that turned into, being more of a booking agent and turned into being a road manager and an artist management. So what ended up happening is that career in music turned more administrative, which led me to work with the transportation companies and arrange tour buses and car service. And I ended up enjoying it. So I went to work for one of the car services. I did that for a couple of years. And as I was doing that, I was then transporting all the security details. And I ended up transitioning right into the security details. And then I spent the past 10 years doing that. And I worked my way up in that industry to the point where I was able to become the VP of the company and spend the past 3+ years as a VP of the company, and actually 5 years at this point.
And I mean, is there some kind of secret to become a VP? I mean, did you were very political, or did you? I don't know. What was the secret? What was the trick there?
You know what? I would always say there's no secrets. You work hard, you do the right things, but no, there are secrets. And I think there's things that people didn't tell me as I grew up and went through the industry, and things that I've always tried to tell my new recruits and the people that are coming in. We get a lot of people that come into the door weekly that join our orientation classes that want to come in and work in the industry. Mm-hmm. But they're doing it because they need a job. They're doing it because they need money right now, whether it's to put themselves through school or whether it's retirement. But nobody ever comes thinking of it as a career. So what I try to do is mentor them to the point where they know that, hey, if I was able to turn this into a career, so could you. And these are the steps you have to take. And I think for me, the best thing I could have ever done with the years in the entertainment industry, it's cutthroat. It's hard. I mean, as a guitar player, you got to fight for every gig you have. You have to fight for every opportunity you get. Every job that comes your way, there's 10 more people standing right behind you waiting for you to fail so they can step in and take over. So that pressure and that ability to take my time and brand myself and build a reputation of a quality product. So then when I went into the security industry, I did the same thing. I started at a lower level position. I tried to prove myself. I tried to fight as if there was 10 more people standing behind me. And I, like everybody else would say, is I worked hard and I put in the effort. And if it required 5 hours of effort, I put in 10 hours of effort. And if it required one person to know, I made sure two people knew. And I would just keep pushing and pushing and pushing and making myself visible and showing that I was there and I was there for the right reasons. And I think that's the trick, is showing people that you have that drive and desire to do what it takes to make it.
But you're not only VP, you also have a coaching business and you have also written books. Why did you also start on the side your coaching business? Was it the principles that you have learned through the years that you want to pass them on to to other people to help them excel?
No, that's a good point, and it is. There's definitely truth to all of that. But what ended up happening is, as I mentioned, the new recruits, and I try to mentor them. What I would always do, we always hear the term, I have an open door policy. Well, I truly wanted to have an open door policy. So I told anybody, it's hard. You say you have an open door policy, but when somebody comes to you and you're in the middle of trying to put together a financial report for the board of directors, you don't have time to stop and talk to everybody who comes to your door. Mm-hmm. So what I did is I made a standing time every Wednesday night after hours. So if we shut down the office at 5, from 6 o'clock to 10 o'clock, I would leave the doors open and I would allow people to come in, and we'd host almost like a mini seminar where we would get up, pick a topic that people might need to know in order to advance their career, and then we would teach them that. Mm-hmm. Even if it was teaching them how to put together a resume or how to learn a new piece of software, or if you were wanting to break into our world of operations, maybe you needed to know how to use the scheduling software. So I would do that every Wednesday night. Every Wednesday night I would do that for my team. And that just built on the coaching. And I ended up with more and more people reaching out to me saying, hey, can you help me do this? And then it started to be people outside of the industry. Mm-hmm. And then it took even a crazier turn about a year and a half ago now, when everybody was hit with COVID. We couldn't do those Wednesday night sessions anymore. We had to shut the office down and we had to have minimum staffing. So we couldn't invite people into the office. So I started doing it similar to what we're doing now and doing it on an online basis. And then that started to take off and people started to like it, to the point where we turned it into a show. And now we do that every Monday and Wednesday nights live. People can come on and ask us questions, and we pick topics to talk about and people to interview. And we've just turned that all into coaching. And yes, there's been a couple books, but it's just all about trying to help people.
And that's the show you're talking about, the Monday and the Wednesday. That's the Franze and French podcasts.
Yes.
Correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay, cool. Now, the people that you are recruiting, they are in your operations department.
Yeah, we're recruiting. They're entry-level officer positions. So anybody that wants to come in, as long as they go through the steps to get licensed, we can then put them out in the field. Mm-hmm. So I don't want to trivialize the position. It does require licensing and it does require some sort of training, but it is an entry-level position that if anybody wants to come along and get it, they can come. As long as they take the steps, they can become an officer. But it's the next steps from there that people struggle with, and that's whether or not it's becoming a shift supervisor or a site supervisor or even an account manager or so on and so forth, to work their way up into the operations world where it's more administrative than it is actually performing the functions of an officer.
Your direct reports, I mean, I assume that you sometimes also have a slot, and that people can apply for that position and they would meet you, I mean, after they have seen HR and et cetera, correct?
Oh, yeah. No, I used to try to get very heavily involved with my recruiting staff. I believe that in our world that recruiting is the lifeblood, because without taking people into our organization, we don't have people to go out and perform the service. Okay. So that's a very, very important position. And I told my recruiting manager that from day one when she was hired. I informed her that, look, your position is probably the most important position in this organization. And she kind of chuckled and laughed. But as time went on, I kept saying it. And I think now she believes it and understands that, look, she's got a very important position. everybody's metrics in the organization comes down to whether or not she's bringing people through the door. So whether it be senior leadership, whether it be the operations team, whether it be the officers in the field, they're all trying to do one thing, and that's provide a service with minimum overtime without missing any hours of service. And if we don't have the people in the field to do that, we're overtaxing the current staff, which causes turnover. And then it also causes overtime, and it causes us to lose what we call dark hours, which are hours of service that were requested but we're unable to provide because we don't have the manpower.
And when somebody who is a direct report candidate and is meeting you, what are you looking for in a candidate, and how are you going to how do you say that, quantify, how are you going to measure that candidate? Are you going to do that based on intuition? How are you going to ask the questions like, what are your strong points? What are your weaknesses? Where you want to be in 5 years? How do you tell an excellent candidate how can you spot, that's my question, how can you spot a candidate where you can see the real true potential, but they don't see that yet? How do you do that?
Sure. I think that comes back from my background. I'm Italian. I'm from Boston. I've got a strong personality. I believe in education, but I don't believe it's the be all and end all. I've fought very hard to become educated, and I believe that that has value and it is important, but it is not everything you need to be successful.
Okay.
So to me, those standard questions of, what are your strengths? What are your weaknesses? Where do you see yourself in 5 years? Those might be good questions for certain people, but they're not for me. Now, my recruiting team might go through a series of questions like that, or qualifying questions, whether or not you're certified for the position or you're not. What training do you have to get licensed, or you don't? But by the time somebody gets to me, it's more about the conversation and the personality. And do I get the feeling that you're telling me the truth, or you're a good person to be around? Especially when we start talking about management level, where the teams get smaller and smaller and smaller. To me, it's more about, hey, are you going to fit into the team? Are you going to be good for the environment here in the office? Are you going to contribute to what we have going on? Or are you going to fight it? And, that comes from conversation. It doesn't come from a question.
Okay.
Everybody's ready to give you the right answers on an interview. It's just like everybody puts the right things down on a resume. That's fantastic. It got you in the door, but now let's just talk. Let's just see how you're doing. And you can identify if somebody has what it takes to make it or not.
And what are the things you're looking for? Are you looking for that if they are listening, if they are asking questions, if they are creating a kind of a conversation, or if they are talking all the time? What are you looking for then?
Sure. No, my standard answer for any type of question like this is it depends, because every situation is different. But to me, I want to get the sense that you have the drive and desire to want to do good, to want to succeed, to want to make your clients happy. And that comes with a certain type of person. Now, yes, some people who talk a lot might be able to get that point across. Some people who are more reserved can get that same point across with fewer words. So I don't believe that there's a formula. I believe it's more of that gut feeling where you have to talk to people and get a sense of who they are. And you just talk to them, find out, I want to know more about you. I don't want to know, about me or my organization. I know that already. And I know you're qualified because if you weren't, my recruiting team wouldn't have put you in front of me. So now let's just talk about you. What do you do outside of work? What kind of, life do you live? What's your family situation like? I can't qualify you on those answers, but what I can do is just get a feeling for where your passions lie. If you light up and start telling me that you're all excited about your podcast, and I say, fantastic, what's your podcast about? And you tell me it's about interior design, well, that's fantastic that you have that passion, but this might not be that position. But if you tell me your podcast is about leadership and running a team, then fantastic. Now we have something to talk about. So it's just about getting to know people, just like anything else. Just see if you have that connection.
So imagine that person has survived, between brackets, the whole procedure. She or he enters. And after a couple of weeks, some coworkers come to you and say, Jay, I don't think it's going to happen. There's something wrong. He or she is not fitting the team, whatever, some strange behavior. Are you what is your option there? Are you going to fire fast, or how? Of course, I assume you'll go into a kind of a dialogue. But how do you deal with that situation? Because I find it interesting, and the reason why I asked that, because I work in an organization as a sales director, and we have the tendency to let people too long in the organization because we try to coach them, etc., etc. Whereas sometimes I think people have talents. Everybody has talents. But maybe the environment was not right. And maybe it's better to look at those talents and to search for another environment which is not in the organization, so that person can really excel those talents. What's your take on that, Jay?
No, that's a good way of looking at things too, because I'll tell you, all of these things, these conversations that I mentioned and the things we're talking about, they happen fast. It's not like I want to sit in front of somebody and talk to them for an hour. I will if there's a reason, but in our world, we move fast. So we have to make fast decisions. So we're trying to identify somebody for a position quickly. Now, if we're talking about an officer who comes in and says, I want to be an officer, I want to move up, I want to do whatever it takes to become a manager and then become an account manager and become an operations manager, I just really want to do this. Okay, fantastic. And then the first day you go out in the field, you come back to me and tell me, I hate it. It's horrible. I can't do this. Well, that is, to me, a lot of that is on us because we didn't talk to you and find out what it is that you were good at. Because I have thousands of open positions, thousands of them, just thousands of clients and, just more open positions than I can think of. So if you were to come to me and say, I want to be an officer and I want to work my way in, okay, well, let's talk. Do you have an interest in, truck yards? And you tell me truck yards. Yeah. Do you like sitting in a guard shack in a truck yard and talking to truckers? If you tell me, no, God, no, that's not what I want to be doing. Well, then that takes care of my logistics vertical. So I know you're not right for that. Mm-hmm. So now let's talk about hospitals. Do you like the hospital environment? Do you like being around that kind of action? Do you like talking to the patients and dealing with administrative staff? Because if you do, maybe a hospital's the right fit for you. Or maybe it's a tech company. Or maybe you like walking around shopping malls. So there's all sorts of different things. And it's my responsibility to find out what it is you have an interest in. Because if you do have an interest for a truck yard and you are that type of person who likes to talk to truckers and be outside and enjoy the fresh air while you're working, well, then I should know that. And I shouldn't try to put you into a hospital because that's the opening that I need the most. So I think from that point of view, that's on me. Now, when we're dealing with higher level positions, like a management level position, if we're hiring somebody from the outside, where normally I would prefer to hire somebody from the inside, mentor them up. But if I do have to hire somebody from the outside, I'm going to have to hire somebody quickly. And I do that based on my gut feeling. And if it's not the right person or if it's not the right fit, then we have to have a talk. And hopefully we can have that talk and we could identify the root cause and maybe redirect. But if not, then we have to make a decision. And a CEO told me once, that decision is happiness. One of us has to be happy, and it's going to be me. So as soon as he said that to me, I knew the right things. I'm like, okay, so either I can be happy here too, or I'm not. And if I'm not, he was more than willing to help me move to another place that would make me happy. But it was that talk that made me want to work for him and made me want to try, and I enjoyed it. So
cool. Now, I don't have to explain that we are living in a world today that is evolving so rapidly that it can be tricky to follow up that pace. If we're 2021, we're what are we? Almost July. If you compare now leadership, your vision on leadership today, and compare it with 10 years ago, what has changed, in your opinion?
Oh, I can tell you some changes. It's mostly the style of leadership. We're no longer taking things from an authority. We're no longer telling people, hey, you have to do this because I said so. It's more about trying to coach and mentor people. But, sorry to interrupt, but were you also that kind of command and control manager, leader 10 years ago? I don't think I was ever to the point of barking orders and doing that type of stuff. Mostly because I spent the first half of my career in the entertainment world. So I was it was about having fun and working with people and taking on those type of challenges and dealing with artists. And there was no real bark order type scenario. From there, I went on, I taught it the engineering practice. I taught it at the colleges, and there was still, even though you are going from a professor down to students, there was no real authority to bark down there either. But I've been around a lot of it, especially in my younger years. I was around managers that would pick up a stapler and throw it at the wall, whizzing right by your head. And, that type of behavior, nothing like that would ever happen today. Or if it does, there'd be much more consequences than there ever were then. So to me, I've always been more about personality and talking to people. And I think it's important to be the type of leader who is a mentor and trains people and takes responsibility for the actions. And like I said earlier, if someone's not succeeding, it's as much my fault as it is theirs. So if you're not succeeding and if you're having a hard time with something, it's my responsibility to identify it. It's my responsibility to help you. And then if you don't take that help, then that's when it becomes your responsibility.
Yeah. It's great. This is really great because I love it how you actually are going to put the organization, your people, actually, that you are pushing them up and uplifting them instead of you have leaders that hire people who are worse than them, and they do that on purpose so they look better.
Right.
I get the feeling from you do it the other way around, because sometimes in certain positions you want people who are smarter for that kind of job than yourself.
Absolutely. No, without a doubt. I mean, working in the security industry, I always say that it takes some very skilled individuals. I mean, we have people who work putting out the wildfires in California. We have people who are doing that could be doing corporate escorts to different countries and trying to deal with kidnapping situations and so forth. So I manage all these people. However, I will tell you that I don't know how to do any of their work. My role is the leadership. It's the managing and the mentoring and the financial reports and all of those things. So I have to hire people who know what they're talking about, and I have to hire people that are smarter than me in that end of the world. And I don't take offense to it at all. Even my director of operations is much, much more suited for the position than I am. He's a very smart individual. However, we have our different strengths. So we work together and we form a good team because he focuses on his area of strength and I'll focus on mine.
Okay. Now, and in the Jay Franze show and Friends, you have already quite a lot of recordings, podcast episodes. What for you were some insights that you learned there from other leaders?
I could tell you I learned a lot in the podcast world in a short period of time. Although we had some really good guests at the beginning, and I would encourage people to go back and listen to the show for the guests and their information, but not for the show purposes, because our show didn't really come to light. It took a while. It took a handful of episodes under our belt before we started to realize what we were doing, whether that be the running of the equipment, whether that be the layout and format of the show, whether that be the direction we're taking. Are we doing interviews? Are we doing segments? Are we doing news or any other type of delivery of content? So there was a lot that goes into it. Are we going to stream it live? Are we going to record audio? Are we going to edit the show? Are we going to leave it live? So these are things that a lot of people, they don't know that happens. And the people who are just in it for the, if you want to talk about cars and you want to put together a podcast, you don't want to be editing audio or dealing with video. You want to be talking about cars. So we talk about leadership, and it just happens to be that we're all technically inclined. We all worked in the audio industry, and
but I was referring to the guests that you were having on your show. What were the insights there that you learned from those leaders there?
Oh, we've had some amazing leaders come on. We've had people who've worked anywhere from the entertainment. We've had Oscar winners come on. We've had some Grammy-winning songwriters come on. We've had some people who are leaders of their industry, whether that be the firearms industry. We had an amazing guest, Julie Golub, who's a world champion firearms competitor. She was in the military. She's written books. And talking to her and getting insights from her and finding out just the way she did things and how things came about for her and what doors opened. Those are the type of things that we love talking about. We had another guest, Rachel Reese, who is an attorney and an amazing attorney and just fantastic. She is a partner in a practice, but she's also a star on TikTok. I mean, she's got a massive TikTok following, and it's just funny to see the different avenues some of these people take or the different interests they have, but are still able to hold down the professional world. I mean, that's a practice-owning attorney who works for the state and federal government as a defense attorney and has a TikTok channel to primarily teach people what it takes to become an attorney, but she's also on there, doing the little TikTok dances and everything else.
Do you dance also on TikTok?
Yeah, I do. I spend a lot of my time dancing on TikTok. No, not at all.
Me neither. Now, Jay, I mean, as a leader, I assume you are learning all the time. Who is inspiring and influencing you? Are there some kind of leaders that you look up to? Are the cliche types like Steve Jobs and Elon Musk or something? Or
Sure.
who are your examples? Where do you learn?
I'm a massive Apple user. So
Okay.
Steve Jobs would be one person I should be able to say that. I don't really agree with Steve Jobs. I mean, he's innovative and he's definitely a person who can influence people to do what he wants done. So I think as far as that goes, he was a good leader. As far as the authority type leader that he also was probably not the way to go. But without it, we wouldn't have the products that I use today. So I can't complain, right? So he was able to get what he wanted one way or another. Now, that's not the way I would choose to get things done. And it's not the leaders that I would mentor or mold myself after. Now, I never had a formal mentor, but I do have people that I look up to and that are mentors of a certain kind. Because I believe we can learn from anybody. I can watch, a leader in a boardroom and think to myself, wow, that was fantastic. What was it that he just did that made everybody happy? And then I could also look at it in a way that, wow, that was probably the wrong thing to say, especially in this crowd. Why would he ever do that? And you learn the right things and wrong things. That's how you develop your style. It's just like a musician or an engineer. I used to listen to records all the time thinking, oh, man, I wish I knew how to do that. And then it got to a point where I was like, oh, why'd they choose to do that? And as soon as I started making that change, I started realizing, okay.
I want to interrupt here.
Yeah.
What is for you the best engineered mixed record of all time for you?
Best engineered of all time.
That you're like, man, that record is great.
All right. Now narrowing it down to one is tough.
Okay. Give me a couple.
Sure. My library is broken down by producers and engineers versus artists and actual music. But obviously the Lord Alge brothers, if you know who they are probably the two most prominent mix engineers in the world. And I like a lot of what they do. I don't necessarily like the way they do it, but I like what they do. And
Can you give some examples of artists or records that they mixed? Because a lot of these engineers are really the rock stars behind the scene. A lot of people don't know them.
Yeah, no. Chris Lord Alge is probably the more famous, or at least he was the first. And his brother followed. He mentored his brother, and then his brother blew up. But Chris Lord Alge, he's known for, probably one of the biggest records he's known for is Green Day. But he has done anything from the rock world to the country world to the pop world. He did one of my favorite bands. Now, here's a really good example. This is an engineer that I looked up to for his craft. I don't necessarily agree with his personality and the type of, the way he does things, but I do like what he creates. And he created an amazing sounding album for Green Day. I mean, just amazing. But then one of my favorite bands was a band called Von Ray. And Von Ray was a band out of Orlando. And they were just one of the best bands and musicians I've ever heard. And he mixed their record. And I don't like the choices made on that record. It doesn't have the presence and the drive and feel that a rock record should have. Where it was captured on Green Day, it wasn't captured on Von Ray. And I think the reason behind that, I don't know how technical we want to get, but I think the reason behind that is because they have one way of mixing a record. And that's full on, balls to the wall, pushing every compressor and every piece of equipment to its most. And for Green Day, that worked like a charm. For Von Ray, which is a more nuanced band, and even though they're still a rock band, they have nuances to them. Their vocals, the vocal of the singer is just amazing. They have actually acoustic guitars mixed in with electric guitars, so that nuance to be able to still be able to hear the nuances of the acoustic while feeling the drive of an electric. That requires a certain type of a mix that they did not capture on that record, or that Chris did not capture on that record. And that, again, it's all opinion. So,
yeah. But I saw him mix. He has a channel on YouTube, and there he is going to explain how he mixes. He does his mixes, and I remember one mix of Muse, the rock band, and I mean, Matt Bellamy has that huge, massive guitar sound. And I don't know how he gets that, because it's quite difficult to replicate that live. And then he explains it, and the separate tracks sound awful. It really sounds, it's like first directly into the mixing console, so it sounds really. And but when he combines that, it creates that huge wall of sound, because it's. If you don't know what it is to create a big guitar sound, because it's a craft on its own. I admire so much the work of a great engineer, because for me, because I also create my own music as a kind of a side passion project, but it's still a craft, working with the compression at the EQ and how to mix those guitars with the bass and the piano and the vocals. It's really an art, especially for the type of vibe and energy that you want to that you bring. It's interesting. It's interesting.
Oh, there's definitely an art to it, and that's what a lot of people don't understand, and that's why a good engineer or a bad engineer can really make the mark of a record. And that example was just an example how a great engineer could make one record sound great and another one not so much.
Yeah. Are there also, if a record comes on the radio and you're driving in the car, and it's mixed poorly, do you then turn the dial and you go to another channel, because you're like, because I'm going to go compare it like this. You have people in the musician scene which have a relative ear and an absolute hearing. So that means absolute hearing, you can play a note and they can say it's a C or a D or an E or whatever. But the thing is, if that note compared to the context is a little bit off, it hurts their ears. Okay? So whereas normal people, it sounds a little bit that they're special.
Most people.
Yeah, most people, they don't have that, so it's okay. They're like, there's something off here, but they don't hear it. Is that the same for you? Because as a musician, of course I can listen normally to a track, but also, of course, I hear the bass. I hear, okay, there is an acoustic guitar, there is piano, there is how they're doing that with the bass. Oh, that's how the drummers are played. I mean, I listen to that drum sound. I mean, every guitar intro of an 80s song, 3 seconds, I can name the song, because I just based on the drum, I can hear Run DMC Walk This Way just on that drum. I can say that's Run DMC with Aerosmith immediately, because I heard that sound over and over again, which is a different sound than U2 or Journey or whatever. Is that the same for you as an engineer?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, my wife laughs at me because I do this with music all the time, but with movies, I point out things, flaws in movies that she's like, yeah, I don't need to know that. That just ruins it for me. And it's the same thing with music. I hear flaws on the radio all the time, but primarily it doesn't bother me. If I'm just driving on the radio, it's more about the feel and the groove and the song itself. And that would allow me to forgive some of the production mistakes. But when something does fall in line because the best produced album could still be horrible. I mean, you can have the best sounding album ever, and it just could be the worst songs ever, and you don't want to listen to it. So to me, I'd rather have that combination of both. And it doesn't have to be the best of everything. It's art. I mean, so what you like and what I like might be two different things.
True. That's true.
You might like a lot of reverb or that, Aerosmith sound, and I might want a tighter, newer, 2000 sound versus the 70s sound. So it's just preference, but as long as things are within that guideline, I like to think of it like, you might have a scale of 1 to 10. As long as we're, 4 to 6 or somewhere in there, we're good. It doesn't always have to be a 10, but I don't want it to be a 1 or a 2 either.
No. Yeah, it's indeed a very personal and subjective thing. I mean, I'm a more of a 70s, 80s Marshall type of guy in terms of sound, and I don't like that modern sounds. But it doesn't mean that I don't like the songs. If the song is great and there's a great melody and it kicks with energy or whatever the atmosphere that they're trying to achieve, it works for me. It's fine. I mean, because I play everything. I play everything from Lady Gaga to ZZ Top to Metallica. I don't care. If the song is great, I will play it. I don't care what it's music. Just like Marvin Gaye said, there is only bad and good music. That's it.
Yeah.
Now, coming back, if you would go back in time, Jay, and how young are you right now?
What's that?
How young are you right now?
Young. Yeah, that's what I thought you said. I'm not young. I'm 52 years old, sir.
52. They say 50 is the new 30, eh, Jay?
Yeah, good. I'm glad they're saying that. Now, if they could make me feel like that would be great.
If you could go back and we would go back to Boston. I love Boston, by the way. I've been there 2 years ago. And I even visited Berkeley, the big music university. I mean, it was one of my dreams. And we go back to Boston. We take a DeLorean, that kind of movie from the 80s. 88. We're meeting the Jay when he's 18. He's drinking a beer. He's standing in front of college or university or whatever. What kind of advice would you give the younger Jay, knowing everything you know right now?
Well, a couple of things. One, that breaking the law by drinking a beer at 18, so probably don't get caught. Let's see. Advice I would give myself at 18 is, slow down. Don't feel like you have to go full speed all the time. Take time to reflect on the things that you're doing. I think reflection has become an important part, and I think that's one thing that has helped me succeed. And I think when it comes down to identifying where you want to go first, then working backwards on how to get there, and then taking the time to reflect along the way and see, is it working for you? Because just because you made a decision doesn't mean it was the right decision. So you make your decision, you plan that, everything, and then you take the time to reflect and take the time to ask yourself, is this the right decision? Is this still the right decision today? Do I still want to be going down this path? If not, why? And what can I do differently? So just take that time to be aware of your surroundings. Don't feel like you're painting yourself into a corner.
And in terms of taking decisions, you mentioned a couple of times today you're using also your gut feeling into the mix of making a decision. Already at the age of 18, were you also using your gut feeling back then, or at least consciously?
I would say yes, and that's probably not in a good way at that point.
Why?
Because my gut was telling me to do things that were a little bit more rebellious than I needed to be. I could have finished school before I went to business school, then I went to engineering school, and then I went back to business school. I would have liked to have finished business school completely first and then done the engineering school. So I wouldn't have had to worry about it later, because business, no matter what industry you're in, business is helpful. It helps you along the way. So I was more concerned with making it in the entertainment industry than I was making sure that my credentials needed to be in order. And again, like I mentioned, I don't necessarily believe that every industry or everything, especially these days, requires formal education, because you can hop online and you can learn just about anything you want to. So as long as it's not something that requires a license or
not to become a doctor or something.
Right.
I understand. Yeah.
So you're good. You can learn that. And if you do need it for a purpose, if there is a need for the formal education, go ahead, grab it, do it.
No, that's a great one. Now, within 10 years, who is Jay? Where is he standing in his life? Doing the same things? Is the podcast then becoming the biggest YouTube hit on all, and then you're no longer working for G4S?
Well, I think that path is going to change, but I think it's going to just continue evolving, and hopefully things keep evolving into something bigger and better, things that I'm passionate about. As far as do I think, I'm not one of those people who wait for retirement or, oh man, in a few years I won't have to work. I will never say that. I always want to work. I don't think that my work is things that, when I look at work, I don't think of it as, oh, I have to do this. I think of it as, oh, I get to do this. I get to make a record today, or I get to work with this team of people today. I get to meet with, anybody from leaders to politicians to musicians. Not many people get to do that, and I don't take any of it for granted. I really enjoy every bit of it, no matter which avenue or vertical I'm working within.
Okay. I have a very, I want to talk, first another question. You're now a VP. I mean, you really pivoted yourself professionally. I mean, having such a big title and such a big position, did you never thought about yourself, wow, the sun is shining through and that your ego was like, I'm the guy right now, look at me. Because you seem like a very humble and serving, yes, that's it, leader. What's the deal? What's the secret there? How do you keep your ego in check, Jay?
Well, maybe when I was younger, that 18-year-old drinking the beer in college, getting ready to go into the world, I think maybe my ego may have been a little bit bigger at that point. Working on my first big records, I probably felt pretty good about myself. But even then, it took so long. I worked for 15 years before I got to work in the studio with big-time people. I cut my teeth recording books on tape and, things that people don't want to do. So by the time I made it to that point, I was older and I was grateful, and I wasn't at a point where I'm thinking, oh, look at me. I was just thinking, oh, thank God I'm here. What can I do? What can I do to stay here now that I've made it here? And if that meant catering to the artists or the producers, and, never once did I say, oh, you're doing that wrong, or try to, insert my opinions or stuff. I just wanted to be involved and learn from the best.
A lot of people have limiting beliefs about themselves and what they can achieve. It seems with you that you have been what people would like to call very successful. Where do you get that mentality or that mindset that you are able to reach everything or that you want? Because a lot of people wouldn't, maybe they think, yeah, I'm not good enough. I will stay in the entertainment sector. I don't want to take the next. I don't see myself as a leader. Where did you get that mentality? Was that from your parents? Was that from friends? Where did you get that kind of positive, uplifting mentality?
I don't know if it's the positive or uplifting to me. I don't think, like, my father worked in the same career for his entire life. My mother was primarily a stay-at-home mom, but when she was working, she was in the She was a hairdresser and worked in that industry. So to me, it's not like I'm trying to think of things far enough outside of my world that I think, oh, I could never do that. Yes, I didn't think I was going to become the VP of the world's largest security company. Didn't think that was going to happen. However, when I got involved and realized, well, okay, I can do this and I can do that, and just take it one step at a time and keep going. Keep identifying that next step on the ladder and saying, okay, what is it going to take to just get to there? So just bite everything off in small chunks and move a little bit at a time. It was the same thing in the entertainment industry. People don't realize I was, like I said, making books on tape. Nothing that anybody's going to say, oh, there's a Grammy for you, or there's some, a project I wished I could have worked on. But it paid the bills. It paid the bills, and it allowed me to learn each piece of equipment. And when I learned that equipment, I was able to then go ahead and move that to the next step, and maybe on my next record, incorporate another piece of equipment or a different step or approach I didn't take the first time.
And did you work on a Grammy awarded record?
I've worked on a handful of. I've never won a Grammy. I don't want to give anybody that impression, but I've worked on a lot of records and with artists that have won the Grammys. Yes.
And can you give us some names? Because I'm quite curious there. Because for me, I'm based in Belgium, Europe. It sounds like, I don't know. Did you work on a record of Brad Paisley? I don't know. That's now a country.
I did not work on a record of Brad Paisley's, but I have met him. Fantastic guy.
Or Keith Urban. That's a guy which is not known in Belgium or in Europe at all. But really? He's an amazing guitar player.
He's definitely one of the best guitar players, country singers, artists out there. He was the very first show that I engineered when I moved to Nashville. I didn't work on a record, but I engineered his show.
Amazing.
The very first one.
He's a great performer too, giving guitars away. I mean, he's everything. The performance, the looks. He can play amazing, tasty melodic solos. I mean, he's fantastic. Same with his duets. He plays sometimes with what's the other John Mayer, for instance. I mean, it's also but these kind of people are not so known in Europe or in Belgium. It's strange, but
that's too bad. No, I've worked on a lot of country records in Nashville. I was lucky enough I met 3 producers that I worked for. A guy named Bob Bullock, who was the most seasoned. He started before anybody else. He recorded big records like Kenny Rogers, Travis Tritt, just countless, Kenny Chesney, just all these big records. And I had an opportunity to work with him for about 3 years. Before, I also worked with a guy named Matt McClure, who was middle of the road, still up and coming. He did a handful of middle of the road, Lee Brice, artists like that. He's worked with a lot of songwriters. And then I worked with a guy named Jim Cristaldi, who's worked on thousands of records, songwriting and so forth, but they're probably things that nobody's heard of. And I was able to learn from each one of those people and able to apply that to my own stuff when I finally got the chance to produce my own records.
If you would work for a guy like Keith Urban, these guys, it sounds like a cliche, but sometimes you hear like the biggest stars, if they are rock stars or country stars, doesn't matter. They are the most humble, and it's that middle class people who are up and coming who sometimes have like a big ego. Is that true, that cliche, or is it a little bit too?
Yeah, no, most of them are down to earth and great people, but there have been a few that were a little too much.
Okay, like a guy like Brad Paisley, he seemed like a really nice guy. He
was awesome.
Yeah, amazing.
Keith Urban was awesome.
Is he?
Yeah, he was fantastic. One of the nicest people I ever met in the industry.
It's amazing, man. I would do everything. I would do a lot to meet these guys. I mean, they're so passionate, and they did a song together, Paisley and Urban, about becoming a rock star. It's an amazing, great. It's a great song. I like their styles because it's not a classic country. It has that urban. He keeps urban more than Brad Paisley, but it has that more modern rock feeling injected into the country they are playing. So I like it a lot.
Oh, hey,
Man, it's amazing.
Let me know next time you come to town, and we'll take a tour of the city.
Yeah, we'll do that. We'll do that, Jay. Now, is there anything else that you want to add that we did not talk about, Jay?
No, I mean, just if anybody wants to check out the show and learn more, please do. FranzeandFriends.com. You can also find me at jfranze.com. And if you go to jfranze.com, not only will you find the show information, but you also find the music and the history there as well.
Okay. Is there something at this moment, 2021, that you like a lot in terms of artists?
It's funny. I listened to some hard rock lately. I listened to Five Finger Death Punch.
Yeah.
So that's a one I listen to regularly. I like the band Hailstorm a lot.
Yeah.
So, I mean, growing up, Journey was my favorite band.
Journey, love it. Oof, I listened yesterday to Don't Stop Believing. Every time, I love it. And I saw Journey during the COVID period. They have done with Narada Michael Walden on drums, because Neil Sean on guitars, and what's the singer? The new singer, of course. And I don't know who was the bass player. And they did Don't Stop Believing, and it's an amazing, amazing COVID version. It's an amazing version. It's a number of 1981, but it's still
one of the best songs ever.
Yeah. It's amazing, and I still have that drive and that. Okay, cool. Now, Jay, I want to thank you a lot for the hour. We made it due to the technical start in the beginning. I want to thank you a lot for your time. And I'm going to put all the details in the show notes so people can follow you. Thanks a lot for sharing, because I really like this. Thanks for sharing and your leadership tips and insights as music tips, because I really like that kind of combination, Jay.
Oh, fantastic. I appreciate you having me on. And if there's ever anything I can do, please feel free to reach out.
You too. Thanks, Jay. Bye-bye.
Bye now.
Hey, it's Peter here. Thanks a lot for listening to What's on Your Mind. Looking forward to your opinions and comments. And don't forget to subscribe on psgrow.com and leave your email address to stay tuned for future episodes. Bye!